So my bit is on the work we've been doing at the Best Practices Working Group for the last year, 2 years or so. We presented this at the TechWorks AI meetup we had last year. Some of you will have seen this before. A little bit of an update for all of you guys, and for everybody else, this will be just a bit of what we're doing. So what we're doing at the top level is we're trying to create a guide to best practices in engineering for the working engineer. There's a lot of guys out there that assume you know absolutely nothing about anything if you're starting with AI, and that is a good thing to do in many ways, because it means that, well, if you assume that your audience knows nothing, then you can teach everybody. And there's a lot of material out there for, well, more material than you could get through in a lifetime for experienced AI engineers. But what we're sort of missing, and what I'll talk a bit more detail about as we go along, is a guide for people who already have about 80% of the knowledge they need. And that is software engineers, existing electronic systems engineers. So, yeah. The place I'd like to start with this is, going into it in more detail, is motivation for doing this. And the motivation is the big skill gap we see in AI. We have, well, globally, we have far more people needed for AI engineering than we have AI engineers. And so let's talk through a few examples of that. So 6 months ago, the UK government, the UK government put up another 180 million skills package to train up the next generation of AI engineers. This is things like, we've spoken about it a little bit already, the AI Centre, sorry, the Centre for Local Training. There's an AI one in Southampton. And by the sounds of things, there's more to come. And in fact, the AI Council published a report last year on the status of these. We've been doing them for a while. We already have an AI Centre for Doctoral Training in Southampton, so clearly this has been going on for a while, and something this report identifies is that even though we're doing a good job with this, there is room for a 5 to 10-fold increase in supply of these things relative to demand. If we skip to industry, Microsoft published a report in 2020 outlining the state of AI skills in the UK. They find that some 62% of firms cumulatively, I think we have a 35% of firms are anticipating a problem with AI skills engineering blocking them things in the next 2 years, and some 28% are already experiencing one. And compared to the global average, this was 4 years ago to be fair, we have UK doing some 7% of reskilling of its employees versus some 17% globally. So still more work to do on the skill gap there. Last month we had the Department for, the National Audit Office, that's this one. The National Audit Office publish a report on AI in government. And their key finding there was that the government is doing AI. The government loves AI. The government wants to do more AI because it's productive, but they can't get and retain enough engineers to do it because they don't. And finally, a report from DCMS 2021. We have, again, similar story here. State of the UK labour market for AI, we have some 62% of firms experiencing some kind of skill gap. So this is the sort of core problem that we are trying to address in the best practices group. As was pointed out in the last talk though, we are TechWorks. It is not in scope to do everything. There's a lot of work already being done on this, so there's no need to reinvent the wheel. So we need to think about what we can do effectively and what gap we can fill. And a gap that we think we can fill is this gap in the market I described a second ago, where there isn't much material to train existing engineers. Not that there's no material, but the approach is usually, okay, we'll just start with this training program here that assumes you don't know anything and go forward. And like I said, existing engineers are an existing software engineer, an existing electronic systems engineer has 80% of the skills they need to be an excellent AI engineer. Okay, the last 20% is important and it's difficult, but it's much easier to retrain somebody who already knows 80% of what they need to know than to train somebody afresh. And so that is what we are trying to do with the best practices group. And I do want to say, while I'm speaking through this, current approaches to doing this in industry and government are excellent. I'm not publishing any of them. They're splendid. They should carry on. But this is just a little niche that we have identified here. And what we would like to do with this guide is to help existing engineers navigate AI and machine learning and to transfer their skills into this field, because quite often we deal with things without having to dive all the way down into them. So I did consider asking if I could do a live demo of the website as it exists, but I thought that was a bad idea. Live demos are bad, we don't do live demos, we avoid them. So instead we've got some screenshots from the website, or what we've got at the moment. And what we've got overall is an alpha version of this guide. It walks you through, in theory, from start to finish, of how do I do AI. I'm an engineer, someone's come to me and said, I want some AI. How am I going to do that project from start to finish? And we have tried very hard to make this a guide for the working engineer. And for the working engineer, what is most important is that they can get to the information they need as quickly and effectively as possible without anything in the way. And that they can get to that information at the appropriate level of abstraction that they find themselves at. So the guide we have set out starts at just 5 top-level questions, which are, should I be using AI and machine learning? The question we should all be asking ourselves before we do any of this. How do I define my project? How do I collect my data? How do I train my AI algorithm? And how do I deploy it? And from these top-level questions, which you could work through in order to take your project from start to finish, we then go into some more detail for each. If we're thinking about how we need to collect our data, maybe we need to think about at least all of these things along the way, preferably in this order. And if you are working through this as a start-to-finish thing, where you are trying to work through your project, you can tick off the appropriate evidence that you've done this as you go. Or if you just need a piece of information, you can slice down to the bit that you need very, very quickly and effectively. And then when we go into one of these, we see even more detail. But again, not necessarily all of the detail. This is a, hopefully, concise description of the things we need to think about. And if we need to understand definitions, or if we need new terms, then we go into the appendix, we find those, and we read about them as we need them. So the current state of this is, as I've said, we've got an alpha version of this. And that means that this is sort of, I suppose, a minimum viable product. You can, at the moment, go from the start of the guide to the finish of the guide, and you will hopefully at the end have answers to your questions and have a product. But I don't know, there's still a lot of valuable content that we could add overall. I think, yes. And that leads to the sort of next part of this, which is sort of one of the reasons I've come to stand up here today, is that we need your help with this. At the moment, this has been written by quite a small group of people, and as the most junior person with the most free time to do these things, I've written quite a lot of it. And I think I've done a decent job, but a good guide will not be one that is primarily written by me. It will be one that is written by a large number of people with a diverse set of experiences and skills. And so yeah, for that, we need help. If you like the image, I generated it on the Stable Diffusion. It was the first one that came out, no hunting for good images. Yeah, and at the moment we are a small group, we meet once a month, and what we need most is ideally technical contributors. This is an engineering guide for engineers, and so the content is primarily technical, and the most helpful thing for us is to have technical reviewers and technical contributors. That's not to say necessarily that you need to be an engineering technical contributor. It is very, very important to us, for example, and in fact I was speaking to one of the earlier speakers about this, that engineers work inside legal and ethical frameworks. I know a lot of engineers are like, oh, I don't want to think about this stuff, but you really should be thinking about it, and you really have to, and it's a very important part of the guide, so expertise in this, for example, would be very welcome. Frankly, to be honest, as I said, we really want a diverse set of people with a diverse set of skills looking at this, so anybody who's willing to look at this, give us feedback, would be absolutely great. And that is the end of my very short bit. This is live at the moment. Online, you can go and have a look at the GitHub pages we put up for this. The document is, at the moment, in 3 forms. It is a nicely formatted web page you can go through. It is a PDF and it is a doc file. And if you are interested in getting involved with this, if you are interested in taking part, or you have feedback or comments, then please get in touch. And that is the end.